I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.
Welcome to Cookies, the world's most influential basketball podcast. I am Ben Detrick. Jordan Redaelli is on vacation. Andrew Kuo, as usual, no days off.
No days off, but Ben, I gotta admit, I'm a little tired today.
Oh, I don't like the sound of that. Should we record another time?
No, I can play through injury.
You want a little nap?
I'm no Kemba Walker. I play through my fatigue.
You know, I know you take no days off, and here I am asking if you need a little cat nap. I should know better.
Well, let me explain first. I was up all night. I go to sleep late anyway, but I was up all night chasing a mouse around my apartment. I have 2 cats that I love very much.
You know what? That sounds like their job.
Oh, they crushed it. So, okay, I have one cat with some very workable disabilities. She is blind, so she cannot really mouse at all. But my other cat, who's a little on the Zion Tubby side, is a mouser, a damn mouser.
Is that
baby.
what they're called?
A mouser?
Like when you're saying she can mouse, that it can be a verb, it can be a noun, a mouser. It can are these actual terms in the cat owning community?
I've heard in the cat owning underground, in the cat owning
the cat skills.
right. Cats anon say that. Yeah, I've heard mouser before as a noun, but I kind of regrettably turn everything into a verb anyway, which I think is a really annoying thing to do in conversation, but I'm guilty of that. But anyway, I'm back to my story, Ben. And
Sorry.
this I have a philosophical question for you.
Okay.
I was chasing this mouse around. My mouser of a cat found this mouse, and they don't kill them right away. They kind of run around with them, let them go, chase them again, pick them up, and all this stuff. So I am trying frantically to save this mouse's life, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm basically trying to battle my cat to get to this mouse, to put it into a container, to take it somewhere, but I'm not sure. But my first instinct was save the damn mouse. My question to you is, why was I having an existential crisis or philosophical crisis? It's the meaning of like, are we the baddies? But who has the bad intent here?
If you have cats with a biological imperative to catch and kill that mouse, then aren't you just letting nature take its course by getting out of the way?
Yeah, but we live our lives by like veering through in different directions of courses, right? Like human beings are annoying in that way. We don't let anything take its course, because if we did, we wouldn't have a doomsday countdown, right? Because you're offering a futurist point of view, just like let the players play the game and let things play out.
Right, but it's also that if you own cats, one of the fringe benefits of owning an otherwise repulsive beast, such as a cat,
you're getting to my question,
would be that they rid your house of vermin.
But isn't that subjective? Because I didn't get cats for that reason. I just really like being around cats, and I know the knock on vermin. They carry disease sometimes. Not that cats don't, but my cats don't go outside, so they only carry the diseases that they produce around me and their buttholes, whatever, you know? Mm-hmm. Which is not that clean. So my question is, who has the bad intent? Who is being good? Can you change? Are you born good or bad? Is a cat born good or bad? And do we frame it in different ways to constantly push it into the direction of what we think is good, which is killing this mouse? Or are cats born bad because I really like mice?
Well, cats are certainly born bad. That goes without saying.
Why do you not like cats?
I'm allergic to them.
Oh, well, that's not a real reason.
It's my only reason.
Yeah, but that's not their fault. It's your fault.
Well, we always frame the wars within the animal kingdom through a human lens, and that's not to say that animals don't have more emotional complexity than we give them credit for. But growing up, every time you turn on like Marty Stouffer's Wild America or something, or any show about lions and cheetahs and wildebeest, there's always sort of a morality play where like, will the animal get away? And the bad guy is generally the predator. And you're like, there isn't any morality in that. One, it's the way that they exist. Like the lions have to catch them and eat them. There's no good or bad there. So in your household,
I disagree.
Who's the bad guy? Like, do you want the lions to eat grass?
Well, this is what separates humans from animals, right? So we apply good and bad to everything. So, of course, like a mushroom is not thinking about good or bad. It just takes over what it needs to do.
Well, that is up for debate. We might just be living in a huge fungal dream. We don't really know.
Well, I think they're aliens who have intellect, and I think they're closer to animals than plants. But
All this talk about the simulation is bullshit. We're just in a huge mushroom fungal cobweb.
Yeah.
Just grow up, people, okay? It's mycelium.
What did they say? Like when in the dinosaur ages, like the mushrooms broke down rock, which came from volcanic matter, and turned it into soil. So they're kind of like the authors of our ecosystem that as we know it.
We're just living in the mushrooms world.
I love mushrooms, but anyway.
They're better pets than cats, I agree.
I don't know if we're at the end of this discussion, but we might be. But my question is, like, there was 3 of us in play. The mouse, me, and the cat. And we all had significantly different motives. And the purest motive may have been the mouse.
What was the mouse's motives? Just survival?
Just to get away.
They certainly have the highest stakes.
They have the highest stakes in the moment. But what about what you have to live with, Ben? I mean, I ended up getting this mouse. I got it into a container, and I didn't know what to do with it. So
how did you get it into a container?
I had an empty plastic takeout, like a soup takeout container from earlier in the day that was clean because I reused those, and a piece of cardboard. And basically, as it was running, it ran into the container that I put next to it, and it just covered it. So I was just chilling in this container, like happy to be away and terrified, I'm sure. So I didn't know what to do with it, so I put it in my basement because I figured that's where it came from. There was no way to do. I mean, I would like to have said I put it into a bigger box and took care of it, but I just don't know what to do. Like, there was no way out of this moral conundrum.
If you put it back into your basement, isn't it inevitably going to end up back in your apartment?
Maybe, or maybe not.
Put it into a familiar environment. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, I know where this is. I go like another floor up, and I'm back around that cat and that guy.
That's okay with me because I'm willing to repeat the whole thing. But I had no way out of this moral conundrum. Do you know what I mean? I was stuck because no matter what I did, I didn't think it was a good action.
Well, I would say this. I don't think there's any problem with ridding your house of mice. I also am someone who doesn't believe that you should kill a mouse if you can avoid it. Because the mouse didn't do anything wrong. It was just hanging out. I remember watching some YouTube videos of this guy who is really into mouse traps. And I only like the live mousetrap ones because I don't want to see an animal get killed.
They're smart.
But it's this weird YouTube channel where he has to keep sort of blurring things out and taking certain ones down because they show the death of mice, which again, I am not into seeing, but that is a large percentage of his videos. So if you look and click, half the times you'll end up a mouse will get killed, which I think is not something I enjoy watching, but people like it. And that kind of fucked me up.
Yeah.
I'd look at the comments and people would be like, damn, why won't they let you show us the mouse dying?
Right.
And I'm like, every time I go down one of these YouTube wormholes, I end up getting really disappointed in humanity. Years ago, it was like the racism. I was like, this can't be real. And then we saw it sort of materialize as like the alt-right and all these different, context. And this is the same thing. I'm like, people want to see an animal die? Like, what's wrong with you? And it's just relentless comments about like just anger towards mice. So I'm glad to hear that you're not one of those people.
I mean, we talk about it endlessly. Like, I'm going to reach a tipping point soon where I don't eat meat. But I think of the celebrity butchers who tried to get the crown or seize the throne. Oh, I forgot the phrase. But
what was the guy's name? Like Salt Lad or something?
Oh, Salt Bay. Yeah, I mean, he kind of worked for a different reason because we have like jerk fascination, like Jersey Shore fascination. But
and sprinkle bias.
Yeah, the classic Boston media sprinkle bias.
You're putting in condiments and spices on from a shaker? No big deal. Ooh, you're sprinkling it from a foot above the plate? God, it's like Klay Thompson's defense.
So another issue I had with that experience last night was it's interesting to watch things that you know really well, like the cats that I've lived with for years, all of a sudden change in front of you. So, like this is the first time I've seen this cat catch a mouse, but it's like a docile, really cool cat, and I feed her every other hour, it seems, and so she has no need to like tap into her instinctual part of her brain, and she's fully domesticated as far as I can tell, and the minute this mouse shows up, she knows that it's game on. And it was so odd to see something I thought I knew so well transform in a split second and like get stuck in that mode. She was wired for 24 hours, or she's still there kind of,
Finally, like what this critter is designed to do. They are killing machines.
Well,
and
like
tried to take that out of this cat. And finally it was like, this is, who am I?
Well,
I'm a murder machine.
Well, I want to talk about this later, but this is the whole Steph Curry narrative, right? Because Mark Jackson was kind of feeding Steph Curry every 2 hours. And finally, management was like, oh, here's a mouse. You were built to chase this mouse. And he's like, I sure was, man.
Well,
I don't want to talk about hoops yet.
Okay. Well, so, what would be really scary if you were small? Are birds. Birds.
Carnivorous birds? Like birds of prey?
Birds of prey are scary as shit, but even like chickens. Imagine if you were a little grub just hanging out in a little dirt pile.
Yeah.
Here comes this thing with huge talons, a super sharp beak. They're fast. They're enormous. They're just these twitchy feasting machines. Birds are scary as shit if you're little. Terrifying.
I agree, except for chickens. I'm with the Ronnie Chang has a stand-up bit about this.
I have not seen that special, so I'm not biting his material.
Oh yeah, this is before a special. It's just like on YouTube or something where he talks about eating stuff, and he's like, I know it's a conundrum. I've said that twice already. Thanks, Boston Media Mafia.
Yeah, it sounds like there's some sort of problem you're facing about that word.
But he talks about chickens, and he's like, I think that's food. I don't see anything in there that would suggest that if Mother Nature didn't just put them on the earth to feed other animals. So chickens, to me, I kind of agree. Not the big ass chickens with the huge talons. I'm talking about like the original Purdue's. Not. But
that's what I'm kind of saying, that even the most benign domesticated chickens that we can imagine, these things that are just designed for us to turn into delicious baked birds, are really scary if you're small.
Yeah.
They're just these dim-witted pecking machines.
Yeah, it's like that Peep Show meme. Are we Hans? Is it possible that are we the baddies? Like
chickens are the baddies.
But meanwhile, the chickens are just like, hey, we're all gonna get turned into like Popeye's chicken sandwiches in a second.
We're gonna be a cassoulet, so like,
yeah,
we might as well go after the little grub.
Like, chickens only bully insects, right? They don't really bully mice.
I don't know. They could bully mice. They might bully each other, right?
For sure.
Is that a thing?
I mean, I don't know. That's a bummer topic. But, like, chicken on chicken violence, great, man.
Okay, let's avoid chicken on chicken. So speaking of cheery subjects, what's the deal with this doomsday clock? I see you were talking about it earlier. I don't really get what it is.
You know how the environmental, I wish I could name the agency, but they have a doomsday clock, and since for a few years it's been stuck on maybe like, I don't even know exactly, like a minute to doomsday. And now they moved it up today to like maybe 10 seconds till doomsday, 99, I forget. Whatever metric they have. My point is, it feels like the most arbitrary thing designed to scare the living daylights out of us, which might be ethical, but to me seems just like a really weird take. Like, it's the eye test. Because I'm really interested in this doomsday clock as a functional way to scare us, but not give any solutions or offer any point of view. It's like symbolic. It's like a horror movie.
Well, isn't it the inclination of every human to sort of assume that apocalypse will happen during their lifetime?
Yeah, it's in our nature. Every
Right?
generation does it.
If you went back like hundreds of years ago and people saw a comet, you're like, what does that mean? Like, end of time?
Yeah.
Like the final days are upon us.
Yeah.
Because I saw, I don't know, like a meteor shower.
Yeah. Orwell,
like it's
the War of the Worlds, right?
It's always going to be something that portends apocalypse.
Right. And a lot of the environmental people I like to listen to in the last year have kind of backed off a little bit, being like, whoa, we're getting really carried away in this doomsday thing. Like, no, you're not going to observe it. I mean, we can observe it already. Like, shout out to Australia. That's a nightmare. And that's environmental 100%. But they're cautioning our imagination. Like, we're not going to be snorkeling in Manhattan. That's not going to happen, but we have to do something now, you know?
Look, I'm not even saying that climate change isn't going to end the world as we know it. Maybe it will.
Yeah.
I'm more saying that all humans forever think that the world is going to end in our lifetime because we only have one lifetime.
Yeah.
And why would it not be coinciding with the most important time that humans have ever lived? I mean, I'm here.
Right.
Like, how could it happen after me? Like, I'm not there for that.
Yeah, I mean, everybody alive now is living the greatest story ever told. And I don't necessarily believe this, but I'll throw it out there. It's not like the most pleasant sounding take, but sometimes when I hear people wanting to save the earth and bring it back to its state 20 years ago or something or another, I always think that that's our hubris as human beings taking over again. And I always switch to, what would a futurist say? The futurist would say, like, everything's getting warmer, so we need to adjust. A futurist would not say, we need to rewind this doomsday clock back to where it was, because our memories are a perfect version of the world. But then 100 years ago, people had different memories, and everything keeps on changing. And if this is so dumb, but if the earth had a voice for a second, it might be, I'm constantly changing, but you guys aren't a part of my story.
Well, I think we can.
It's a bad take, but it has crossed my mind.
I was going to say, I think we can acknowledge that the earth itself will be okay, and it will eventually reach some sort of neutral buoyancy, whether humans are here or not. Like, the earth doesn't care.
Right.
It's not like, we can wipe out all the other animals and then we can wipe out ourselves and the earth will just kind of not care, and then it'll eventually repeat this cycle of growing organisms.
Right. And the earth has no feelings as far as we know. So this is just a useless exercise. But
right. But when we talk about the plight of climate change, of course, it's how is this going to change the world as we know it? And what will it mean for humans and animals and vegetation and our offspring, et cetera, et cetera? What does it mean for us? Do we want to live in a world where there are massive extinctions of animals that we know of and that we caused? Like, no, we don't want to live in that world. That world kind of sounds like it sucks.
Yeah.
Like, that's what climate change is. It's us altering our own reality.
Yeah, and this ties into whatever take you have about, or whatever you think gentrification is, and the way you live through spaces that you occupy in your life. And it gets to be a really confusing thing for me. And as I get older, I keep on saying that. Anyway, recently I've been thinking that everything's a lot more complicated than it was like 5 months ago.
You saw the was it the Brooklyn? What's his actual title? I forget. Brooklyn Borough President. I think.
I thought you were talking about Kevin Durant, but go on.
No, he's the king of Brooklyn.
That's right.
But the Brooklyn Borough President, I believe, said that people who are from Ohio or people who are from whatever their heartland state he referenced, who are in New York, should go back there.
No.
And people were annoyed by that. But it also turns out that this guy has taken a lot of money from developers and landlords. Like, if that's not the height of fucking irony, you're going to blame the people who have moved here from other places while your campaign's war chest is filled by the people who built the new structures that house those people.
I've decided not to care about losing basketball games and hypocrisy in the world, because you can never catch up. If I think long enough, I'm running around trying to save a mouse, but I have meat in my freezer. It's just like, it's hard for me to wrap my head around all this stuff. But yeah, Well,
you are a huge, huge hypocrite. I think that's what we can acknowledge here on Cookies Hoops, the most influential basketball podcast, is that Andrew Kuo is an enormous hypocrite.
Right. But like, I don't know how to talk about that thing that you mentioned, like somebody saying I have an ethical point that I want to put out there, and then maybe they don't display it in their action. Like, I don't know how to talk about that. I don't believe in authenticity. I barely believe in hypocrisy, because I just think that's the way we live. So it just helps if we just stop doing that.
Well,
I mean, people have to be held accountable, but nobody's held accountable. So what are we doing,
Yeah, but this falls into the quo, everybody's trying their best. Like, if someone is blaming the wrong people while benefiting from the exact same thing that they're criticizing, I'm not mad at this guy. He just deserves to be primaried. Right. He deserves to be called out on his bullshit. I don't think we can say everyone is compromised in some way, so you can just go and be incredibly compromised and dishonest and spewing your bullshit, and we won't call you on it. Like, I'm not saying this guy is evil. I don't know him. Right. I don't know what his actual policies are in Brooklyn. I even sympathize with the idea of Brooklyn, where he grew up, being changed by people who were not from there. Mm-hmm. I sympathize with that idea that, as we're talking about, climate change. He experienced that in Bed-Stuy, in Brownsville, and neighborhoods that he is from. He has seen climate change, and he doesn't like it. Get it. But he also can't take money from developers without us saying, dude, what about that?
Yeah, I guess so. And,
But I mean, what's your alternative? To not call him out on it? Then no one deserves to be called out for anything?
Or maybe not to care. Or like, maybe my whole thing is like, someone else cares a lot about that, and I just care a little bit about that. And what I mean by like, what I mean by the take of everyone's trying their best, it comes down to the mouse and the cat idea. Like, who is the bad actor? Who is acting based off of who was born good and who was born bad? Who was created in what way? And can you do something that changes that path? And I'm not sure you can. And they made a whole hit comedy show about this called The Good Place, and it's amazing. But it's a really interesting thing to if you think about the way people live in New York City, the way people eat in New York City, what we do with our bodies and where do we inhabit places like bars and supermarkets and all that.
Well,
stuff.
I think we make choices, and that determines whether we're good or bad. I don't necessarily believe in the idea that we are born in one way or another. I think we are defined by what we do.
You'd be in the minority there, and that's what the whole show's about. Aristotle was the one, I believe, who said you can change the path of your life from good to bad or from bad to good, and no other philosopher in history of note agrees with him. But
he was shut down by the Boston Media Mafia.
Right. Or maybe he is the Boston Media Mafia.
I did not think about that. So we're going to switch to basketball now because I've had it with your
sorry.
Your moral ambiguity. At least you were exposed as a hypocrite yourself before you went into your feverish defense of hypocrisy. Now it all makes sense.
Not defense. It just doesn't matter, Ben.
Your heartfelt, impassioned defense of a life of hypocrisy, a meaningless existence of dual identities, a land of contrasts. Anyhow. Anyway, we both went to some basketball games this week. You caught Sixers-Knicks, I caught Sixers-Nets, and then I went to the Lakers-Knicks game the other night. How was your experience at the Garden, Andrew Kuo?
I love the Garden. I saw the Sixers barely beat the Knicks in a nail-biter of a game where the Knicks successfully enforced the Garden court for 3.5 quarters. I love MSG. It's way too expensive, but I think the experience is fantastic. And if you can get in the building, it's pretty awesome. It's a little melancholy to see 70% of the crowd rooting for the opposing team, but also really amazing. I mean, it's cool to be at Wells Fargo Arena in Midtown New York. It was cool, man.
Shout out to people who sent us posts of themselves wearing all kinds of Bullies gear. Thigh bully, regular bullies, bumper bullies, the full gang. That was cool.
The gang was all there, and unfortunately, I decided I wanted to buy something from the Knicks shop, and I went in, and I believe I sent you a picture of my options, and they were Alonzo Trier T-shirts.
You bought the Alonzo Trier Authentic?
I couldn't do it, man. I couldn't pull the trigger on the Alfred Payton throwback. I want a Mitchell Robinson, but I don't really like the number 23 visually, so I passed on that too.
So Mitch is coming off the bench, and you watch him play. He still looks really good. And I was there for the Lakers game. It was kind of in the same way as the Philadelphia affair. It was a competitive game for most of the time. And I think the Knicks fell behind by about 10 against Los Angeles with, 2 minutes to go, and it kind of just sort of ended the game. Mitch looks good. He had some comments, though, where it sounds like he's being brainwashed, where he started talking about how he needs to shoot the ball. Are you disappointed that he is being turned from an ethical basketball player who just dunks into a cheater?
Yeah, I'm kind of disappointed. I mean, of course we just want things to be in a box, and I want Mitchell Robinson to be Shaquille O'Neal, but skinnier and on the Knicks. And I don't blame him for wanting to be a more well-rounded player and grow as a Knick, because he's only 21, and he's shown he can excel at rim protecting, at dunking the basketball ethically. So I get that he wants to become something more than himself. And I have doubts about how that would go, and it will probably drag the things that he does do well. And the Boston Media Mafia has really gotten to people about Ben Simmons and how if Ben Simmons could only shoot threes, he'd be kind of as good as LeBron James, which is ridiculous because no one is, and everyone has weaknesses. But I don't blame Mitch, but I'm kind of bummed to hear that, because that means he's going to regress for a little bit.
Looking at the Knicks roster, I'm sure there will be some sort of action on the trade deadline. Like that only makes sense. Mitch is also the only guy that when I'm watching a Knicks game, I say that's a keeper.
I agree.
He's the only one. I'm not saying that RJ is a lost cause or Knox or any of these young guys. But Mitch is the one out of this group. And it's also odd that they don't start him.
I don't care. This year just doesn't matter.
No, I agree. It doesn't matter. But they still start Taj Gibson.
Oh, yeah, that's been coming up on Nick's Twitter about how these vets are playing more minutes than Frank, than Mitch, than Knox. It's because we're showcasing them. They're showcasing them before the trade deadline. So these guys have to go out there and accumulate these stats for them to have value.
I'm with that. I think that's true, and that also makes sense.
This has been the plan since the summer. It's a bad plan, but you have to stick to it, because if you don't stick to it, then it's useless.
Okay, I'm with that. That makes sense to me.
Right?
I don't think you're going to have any takers for
I don't think
Taj
so
Gibson. I think Morris, you might get a late first, but I kind of doubt it.
I doubt that too. And it came out recently, maybe even today, that Fizz was fired because the Knicks perceived themselves getting into the playoffs. They thought they had an 8th seed with this roster, which to me is wild, because this roster, to me, is clearly a top 3 lottery team.
They're currently 12-33. That places them with the 3rd worst record in the NBA, just about the same as Cleveland, who is only slightly better, who has 1 less loss. So yeah, they are a bottom 5 team. I don't think anyone outside of that organization looked at that roster and said, all right, we're a top half. We're a top 16 team in the NBA.
Some fans did. Some fans, I think, before the season started.
Oh, no, they did.
Yeah.
I'm more saying anyone who's sane who looks at that team. Right, there are delusional Knicks fans. That is a well-known trope. But it's wild that people in the organization who are ostensibly paid to know basketball, or at least are paid to convince Dolan that they know basketball and that the product is going to be satisfactory, it actually sounds more like a communication error to me.
This is my whole Scouts take.
They could not convey, without fearing of losing their job, that this team was not going to be good. So they trotted out a bad team after making promises that they could not deliver, and then said, we'll deal with the ramifications. And the ramification of that was Fizz being fired.
Yeah, and they've won a couple games that they shouldn't have this year. But this is my whole idea with the Scouts that I talked about last week. I think Dolan, however annoying he is as a person that we've heard about, his intent is fine with me. I think he goes to his staff and says, get me some good players so I can make the playoffs. I care about this 8th seed. Go get me the 8th seed. And these scouts, and the GM says, okay, scouts, go identify the contracts and players that fit what my boss wants. And they come back with Bobby Portis, Julius Randle.
Why would you blame poor roster decisions on scouting instead of on management? Like, that's their job. Like, if they are running an NBA team, they're supposed to know the other players in the league. They're supposed to know who's available. They may have scouts to offer advice, to go through and watch film if they're interested. They have capologists, I would assume, like most teams.
You're describing a functional corporation, a company. You're describing a restaurant.
I'm saying if these guys are showing up to work every day or most days, spending some time in the office, talking about basketball for a large percentage of the day, it does not follow that they wouldn't know who like Etuan Moore is. Like, they just have to know those things by virtue of being in a basketball office and talking about shit.
I don't believe so. I don't think the Knicks operate like that. I think most other teams do.
But Perry's worked for several teams.
Perry has been he's been around success. So
that's what I mean. I think if you mentioned a basketball player on another team, Perry would know who that person is and have a rough idea of their salary and if he's interested in them as a player.
But all of that doesn't matter.
I cannot say that about Mills.
But all of that doesn't matter. These individuals have been, like, Perry has been a part of success. Phil Jackson has been a part of success. Isaiah Thomas. As soon as you step into a restaurant whose chef acts the way Mills does and whose owner acts the way Dolan does, you can't really put good food on the table because you're not the ones making the calls, right? And I think what I'm saying is, if there has to be some way to describe what's going wrong, and we've identified Dolan, we've identified Mills, and we've identified maybe even Perry, but what are they dealing with?
I just contest the idea that their failures are coming from poor scouts. That just doesn't follow to me, because I don't think you really rely necessarily on like scouts when you're trying to figure out who to add to your team. Like, yes, you may say, we're looking for a guard. We need a guard. Give me a list of guards who we could acquire and like their salary criteria.
Dennis Smith
I think they
Jr.
would, and I think they would give you a list that you could then go through. I don't know. I think this ultimately has to lie on the guys who are making the decisions, not the anonymous minions beneath them who are feeding them information. Because we just don't.
No one's
who those
anonymous.
people
They're
are.
listed on the. You can just Google their names, and they've been a part of the organization for as long as Mills has.
Kuo, say it. What do you got?
Oh, I don't.
What do you got? What do you got? You got something. I hear there's. You got something here. Tell me who's making these decisions. Who's telling them this stuff? You seem to know something.
Not as much as you think, but
This is an intriguing, tasty little nugget.
all right. What are you getting? Ask me some more questions then, because I don't.
Is there a scout whose judgment you specifically question?
No. What I did was I went through the Knicks front office, and there's a filter on a website. I think it's the first one that comes up when you look it up. Then you can see how many years people have worked in the organization, and obviously Mills and Dolan are on the top, and then right below it are the scouts. So they've been a part of this whole thing, and the general managers keep on switching, like Phil Jackson, Isaiah Thomas, Perry, whatever. But the scouts are constant throughout the whole thing. That's why it leads me to believe that they rely on all parts of their organization, and some parts of their organization are failing them. We assume the waiters and the hosts are going to be the best waiters and hosts because they're not management. But if they're not good, you're not getting anything done. You're not booking tables, right?
I don't know what kind of turnover there is in
Sure you do.
No, in the scouting department.
Oh, it's like 15 years and going.
I don't know how it happens in other organizations that if you hire a new GM, you just get rid of all the scouts and bring in your own guys. I would assume that happens. That there is a cleansing, a purging of old scouts. Right. It may not be wholesale, but I would assume that happens to a degree when a new regime comes in. But this Knicks regime has generally been stable other than, Phil Jackson. It's mostly been these guys and Grunwald. That's kind of been the front office for a long time. These guys have been in that building.
Yeah, there was a Donnie Walsh run that I really enjoyed. With sports, I constantly ask, am I asking the right question? So after complaining about Dolan for 20 years, I get to the point where I ask, am I asking the right question? Can someone be successful like Dan Gilbert, who is even worse than Dolan? Why does he have a championship? Is it luck? Is it the people he hires? Dan Gilbert hired a capable GM, and we're seeing that GM's strengths in New Orleans right now. So I have to ask that question about the Knicks, because complaining about Dolan and Mills has been done. I'm done with that. We heard recently that on the grapevine that Dolan is meddlesome and he gets into players' personal space. I just don't care anymore. We know this all. If you told me Dolan texts players at 5 a.m. in the morning asking if they wanted enough, sure, I get that. We've been We've been dragging him for that for 20 years. I'm not interested in that.
Look, I understand you are in a dark place. You're reaching out. You're clutching at straws, and now you've landed upon the scouting department as the culprit for the Knicks' woes.
You're being super Boston Media Mafia today. It sounds like you were just on a Boston Media Mafia website.
Interesting.
I don't know, man. It sounds like you might get down to some Dropkick Murphys right after this pod.
I've had enough of your shamrocks and your shenanigans. Enough about the Knicks, and let's talk about that GM who has done a somewhat competent job in New Orleans, because yesterday we saw the debut of the number 1 pick from the last draft, who had missed every game up until this point with some sort of knee injury. I caught the highlights because I was at a very important Lakers-Knicks game yesterday. Did you watch any of the game live? And if so, give me some feedback. What did you think of Zion's debut?
I watched the whole thing. Trajan Langdon is their GM, but I was talking about David Griffin, who was their president. It was pretty exciting. I was a little let down. It felt like the energy was not quite as fever pitch as I expected. I heard the ratings were great. Zion came out. He looked kind of sluggish, and then he shot like 4 ugly threes that went in, and people lost their minds, and it was amazing. And he had no dunks, which is unethical. A few good putbacks. It's weird when I say this. His twitch muscles are wild. He can get up and down to get rebounds and putbacks so fast for a big boy, for a large lad. And it was cool to see him against, men, and he's going to be good if he can stay healthy.
We talked about him not being able to shoot threes in the past. And as someone who enjoys weirdo basketball players, I want more guys to embrace a non-shooting future, our post-future NBA, our post-shooting NBA, in which shooting at all positions now enables weirdos. That said,
the interns really whiffed on that.
They did, idiots. That said, with Zion's health issues and his weight, I'm really happy for him that he seems to have at least another passable weapon in his arsenal, because I know he's always run a little weird, but him even being bigger, it seems to exaggerate some of that awkward shuffling that he does. But, he can still get to the basket. He's super strong. He has that ability to kind of elevate and then sweep his arms around defenders to get close to the basket. To your point, he can get a rebound and quickly go up with it before people seem to have even left the ground once. He's a really, really cool player. And I am happy that his ability to shoot might keep him in the league, in terms of he doesn't have to necessarily try to dunk on people. He doesn't have to try to battle in the paint where he can land on someone's foot wrong, etc. Shooting threes is a lot easier on the body than doing the other things that he needs to do.
Mm-hmm. And he doesn't really even jump when he shoots those threes, which is great.
I don't think his feet left the ground.
No.
It's kind of a weird slingshot push thing.
Yeah. And let's not, what I need to resist
I just want him healthy is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So my own personal agendas about post-shooting basketball, screw all that. I want.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got my own, and the interns translate them in ways that get roasted.
It's sad that they got more gruel today. I mean, they got to want it more tomorrow.
Yeah, they are getting less tomorrow. But anyhow, I'm glad to see that there is a version of Zion that could potentially be healthier.
I agree, and I try not to live in the moment too much, because this is just one small 20-minute window. He could come out at some point and not look great, and every rookie has bumps. And LeBron James, as great as he was as a rookie, had some ups and downs. So I think Zion is everything we'd hoped for so far, and to know that he's going to gonna have some rough patches, and his injury is concerning. But he looks healthy. I saw a report that he felt no soreness today. I think the minutes restriction is a great idea, and I'm excited. The Boston Media Mafia wants us to pit every single thing against Ben Simmons. So there was a debate today about, well, he's already better because he's willing to take that shot, and he hit 4, so he might even be good at that shot. I just don't care. He's not a playmaker. He's a finisher. I said this to you earlier, and I still believe it. If they were in the same draft, I might take Ben Simmons before Zion Williamson. Still.
I definitely would.
I love playmakers. I love players who see the court. I love that trust in a ball handler so much. And Zion is incredible, and he's not far off from that value.
Well, I mean, we're talking about a top 15 player versus a guy who's played one game. I mean, the injury issues alone would be enough to scare me off.
I mean, Ben missed a year or two,
But that wasn't because he's injury prone. I mean, he did get injured for sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, I just don't. In any situation, if someone said, "Would you rather have Zion than like Rudy Gobert?" I'm like, well, we know what Rudy Gobert can do in the NBA for a prolonged period of time. Yeah. He can be an elite defender. He can be a top 15 player. True. I would be hard pressed to take any prospect unless they were like LeBron James.
Yeah.
Ahead of any top 15 player. It's just the math to get to a top 15 player is really, really difficult.
Absolutely. And yeah, you're right. Simmons is already there. It's odd when I really love passers, like I said. And when people knock Zion, well, when people knock Simmons, it's like, well, he's a point guard. He's supposed to pass. I look at it, I've always thought about it in different ways, so that always takes me, I've always considered Simmons a point guard by default because he's such a good ball handler and passer, but if he couldn't do those two things, he would just be Domantas Sabonis and just dominate the paint. What if Domantas Sabonis had handles, court vision, and an incredible touch for setting up threes for his teammates,
and ran incredibly fast
with the ball, and saw 2 or 3 plays happen at the same time, sort of like Lonzo does, or Jason Kidd? I mean, Domantas Sabonis would be an all-star starter, which Ben Simmons is in the conversation to be.
The odd thing about the juxtaposition of Zion and Ben Simmons is that they have nothing to fucking do with each other.
I know.
Nothing. And it was really weird. And it almost felt like Simmons has vanquished all of, say, like the Boston bad guys. Like, he's clearly better than all of them.
I agree.
And they have no answer for him. He's far superior. And it was like, that movie is over. And now the sequel with Zion. But is he better than this guy? And you're like, what?
Yeah.
Zion? Like, you're bringing up... Like there wasn't even a connection between the two.
Well, the connection is number 1 overall picks, right?
Well, that's true, but there wasn't even like they're not similar. Other than they didn't really shoot. They don't play similarly at all. I don't know. It was just, it felt like a very arbitrary thing of, well, we've lost this battle because Ben Simmons smashed everyone's face over the last like 5 games. So now there's a new character that we're gonna compare him to. It just felt desperate and frantic in a really odd way. And also, what was up with like 20 people, like, or outlets all tweeting the exact same thing about like 4 3-pointers in one game versus 2 in 3 years? Like literally like 10, 20 different outlets tweeted the same thing. Very weird.
They're gonna, instead of revealing the Superman S, it's gonna be a shamrock. It's gonna be Dropkick Murphy's t-shirt.
But honestly, man, it was really weird.
It's weird. I mean, DeAndre Ayton doesn't want any of this smoke. Go pick on Officer Mitchell. Like, he's not that good. He was supposed to be like the second coming of Kobe, and he's just good. Like,
Markelle Fultz is like DJ Augustine's understudy, and we're like, time to roast Simmons.
I know. Think about all the players that get away with it. It's like Jamal Murray has the same contract as Simmons. And he's just like, okay, like, would I be happy with him on the Knicks? Like, I don't know. Kinda.
John Wall, just under the radar.
Yeah.
But anyway, this leads into yet another Sixers conversation. We'll try to be quick with it so, we don't get stuck on it. But it was a big part of the media this week after Ben Simmons won Eastern Conference Player of the Week, was that the tides quickly shifted to, should the Sixers trade Embiid? And it's this exact same drumbeat of Philadelphia somehow needing to trade one of their two superstars. Because, of course, if there's anything we've learned about the NBA, it's that you can't have two superstars. You can only have one. And they have to be a bunch of role player, unitasker shooters around them. That's the way you win in the NBA. But it's really crazy, though. It just shifted, and it's just incessant. It's from everybody. Now it's like, trade Embiid for Mo Harkless and a protected second.
Montrezl Harrell's expiring contract for Joel Embiid. He's tenacious.
And no one ever says, well, why don't you trade Joel Embiid for Karl Anthony Towns? Why don't you trade Ben Simmons for Karl Anthony Towns? Why don't you trade Paul George for Kawhi Leonard? They're never a good suggestion. Right. They're never one that makes the Sixers better. Yeah. Every single time, it's like, let's trade them for a sequence of bullshit parts that will make the team worse and pretend as if it's a valid suggestion.
I mean, we tease out the Boston Media Mafia, but what we're really talking about is the culture of sports talk. And in America, we eat French fries with ketchup. In Europe, they think that's nuts. They eat it with mayonnaise. It's just the way that we've always done it. And I think there's so many, if you just go through mastheads, everybody gets together from Boston and talks about the problem with the Sixers. The biggest proponents of the Sixers, like Pablo Torre, not from Boston. Chris
did
Ryan
go to Harvard. He might be.
Oh,
he might be.
Sleeper.
Could be a sleeper. Love you, Pablo. Are you a sleeper? Ingratiating himself with Sam Hinkie. Wow. See, all roads lead to the bean.
Yeah, it's kind of wild, and the defense of we're obsessed with the Sixers because
I may have had a member of the Beantown Media Mafia text me this morning about the Beantown Media Mafia. Yeah, they're trying to shut us up, Kuo. They don't want to hear this. They're not ready. They're not ready.
We won't be silenced, man. These kids have to be themselves and get these leprechauns out of here.
Zion is a young king. Joel Embiid is a young king. Ben Simmons is a young king.
We will not stand
by while they're pitted against each other for the blood sport amusement of these shamrock-wearing little people.
Easy with the little people.
Sorry, I
little to who? I'm bigger than that mouse I chased around, that's for sure.
You're bigger than these leprechauns in so many ways.
I was like, to the mouse, I was like, who's in whose house now?
Did you post up the mouse?
I bullied him. But it is odd, and the defense of when I hear people say we only talk about the Sixers because they're fun and they have the potential to be great. It's almost like that playground bully who says, oh, I care about you. That's why I beat you up. I need to toughen you up. And it's like
some earnest, heartfelt words from some Boston fans about what the Sixers could do to become a championship team.
I know. It's just like
trade one of your two players that's better than anybody on the Celtics and go from there.
I know. Like the Sixers have a chance to win the chip every year Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons are together.
But that's why you see the desperate tenor that, like, if they don't win this year, well, you got to break them up now.
Yeah.
Dude, you got 5 to 7 to 8 to 10 years of trying to get past these guys unless you can drumbeat a trade and get one of them out of town. Otherwise, you cannot get by them if the Sixers front office is even remotely competent. if they didn't build this team in this complete nonsensical fashion, Sixers would be cruising to a championship.
Yeah. But also,
Cruising. It's the easiest thing in the world. You have two superstars. You have two guys who are the best 5 defenders in the NBA. You have a guy who is a offensive genius in terms of passing and one who can score 27 points a game efficiently. It makes so much sense. They work great together. And yet, every day, it's like, trade one of them for Inez Kanter, then sign a Mo Harkless. Maybe get yourself a Morai. Anything to get these two guys apart.
And even though Carb King, large lad, the lusty large lad lover, Elton Brand, put together a trash collection of nice players, but trash combination around these two stars. I'm grateful he just signed Simmons long term and just got rid of the narrative of should the Sixers re-sign him. Because the organization is like, oh, he's our guy. Whatever you guys say, we just have him for long term. So, yeah, you can talk about how he doesn't want to shoot forever and Brett Brown should quit talking about it, but we just have him, so that's not even an issue. They're not going to trade him.
Can I tell you who I am concerned about?
Not Matisse.
No.
Not Mr. Peanut. Not the legume legend.
I'm not even talking about the Sixers.
No?
Let me tell you who I'm concerned about.
Who are you concerned about, man?
The Boston Celtics.
No!
Now, this is a team that went on a bit of a slide. They have been struggling. They had a meaningless win over the Lakers, maybe another meaningless win after that. But this is a team that is on the ropes. They're in dire shape. They need to make a change. And I think what I've noticed is that they seem to have a spare point guard. Like, you have Marcus Smart and you have Kemba Walker. What kind of team has 2 point guards? Now,
it's redundant.
It's redundant.
It's a conundrum.
You have a spare. That's your third conundrum. Now, what I think about this is, in their Boston situation, the problem is that you have 2 beta males competing on whose team it isn't. And if you can get rid of one of those guys and bring in someone who wants it more, maybe that's what could solve this Boston problem. Because when you look at Kemba Walker, he's a delicate dancer. He is a filigreed little speck of fairy dust. He plays in a specific style that does not mesh. It does not intertwine with the game of Marcus Smart, who's a hog. He wants to root around with his snout. He wants to wallow for truffles. He's a hog.
The defensive stat.
You can't put them together. It's like oil and water, Andrew.
Would you trade Kemba Walker for Lou Williams?
I'd like that. But what if you traded him?
Spencer Dinwiddie?
I'm thinking someone larger, someone whiter, someone that...
With a championship ring? Mm-hmm. Who's a lover of that winning attitude?
Yes.
Wow. Matthew Dellavedova and Kevin Love.
I like where you're going. I'm also thinking maybe a Plumlee.
I
don't care which one. No one knows. No one
true.
knows. No
It's
one
true.
knows. Kemba for a Plumlee could give you the Twin Towers with Inez Kanter that the Celtics need if they really want to. If they really want to go somewhere and they want to win a championship, they need a better fit. And I think a Plumlee would be the one to do it.
Myers Leonard and Goran Dragic for Kemba Walker.
Oh, man, I just care about the Celtics and want them to succeed. I'm just trying to help here.
Right. It's all about space, because if you look at their games, their space is an issue.
The spacing. You have 2 guys who want the ball at the top of the key. Like, how can you do that? You know, this is a bunch of impressionable young journeymen, and they've got 2 point guards? Like, what is this, Kuo? 2 point guards? Come on, that's nuts.
Listen, if the shot goes in, the space was made. If the shot doesn't go in, what's up with the space, man? It's like
Dude, think about the spacing.
It's the spacing, always.
A lot of people don't understand it, but A lot really comes down to the spacing.
Listen, if you watch the games like I do, and you've played the games like I do, the spacing is just the issue.
Yeah, I've noticed that. A lot of the guys that talk about sports don't watch the games, you know? And like that's how you learn is watching TV, and you're seeing the game in front of you and you're watching it. And I think that's the kind of opinions that I really respect of the game watchers.
Mm-hmm. It's an issue in Boston, and maybe a Gallinari could help them. Maybe they should target a Gallinari.
Kemba for Gallinari. That seems to make sense.
That could work.
Gives them shooting and spacing that they need.
So they get rid of the poor spacer and they add a better spacer. I get it.
They have 2 point guards. That's like, is that even legal? Can you have 2 point guards on an NBA team?
Is it a Euro spacer too? Oh man, they'd be cooking.
Yep. They'd be cooking with gas. Maybe throw in Jason Tatum as a sweetener, and you are cooking with gas. Your Boston beans are sizzling.
Right, because that frees up more shots for Tice as soon as you let go of that stat hog, Jason Tatum. But, it comes down to Tatum messes up their space. So if you get rid of him, it just opens up the whole court for Tice.
Why not play with 4 players? Imagine the spacing you would have. Just go
man.
one-on-one. That one player could go anywhere.
Ooh, just have Tice cherry pick at the offensive end or defensive end. Defensive cherry picking. I don't know. Yes.
They're playing 4-on-5 with Tatum out there. Here's a question for you that's totally off topic. I'm just abruptly changing topics. What do you think about this coronavirus scare?
This is not about a wonderful night at the bar with a bucket of beers. This is life and death.
When you're passing around the Tecates and someone with a cold sore gets a lick at it.
It's not about a lime in the eye, Ben. This is real. But seriously, a lot of people died in China. I think double digits.
I'm not making fun of the disease, the virus. I'm making fun of the name coronavirus.
Right. Are you asking me if it's a racist?
Yes. I want to know. You are an Asian man.
I am.
Every time one of these viral scares comes over from the East, we'll say, do you feel like people are looking at you funny? Do you feel like, is there a stigma that comes along with it?
You poke fun, but remember SARS?
No, I know. I'm trying to broach this in a funny way, but I absolutely remember SARS and like Chinatown and shit. Yeah,
and they identified falsely the origin of SARS in one of my favorite noodle shops called Boky, Boky, and it's an amazing Vietnamese kind of fusion noodle shop, and they said the origin of SARS started there, and
they did have incredible civet cat, if I remember correctly.
The health department was like, no, that's not true. The owners had to put up signs being like, the owner is still alive. He is not dead. We are not sick. We are open for business. Everything is fine. Not
involved in human trafficking.
Yeah.
SARS did not start here, FYI. Put up a big sign, let people know we do not have SARS.
JJ Redick was just in here eating a bowl of noodles, and he left. Therefore, we are good to go, people.
The person in the cage beneath his table was alive and well.
Yeah. But it's sort of like that quick thing that people don't actually care about, that they just want to put in a place. Like, Ben Simmons can't shoot threes. Be like, aha, I'm a basketball expert. It's like, oh, SARS started in Chinatown with Chinese people. It's like, yep, checks out. That's what I'm going to go with. But this is how everything works. People vote for president in the same way. People do everything in the same way. And people are racist in the same way. And, I am annoying about this stuff where it kind of doesn't... It makes me sad and doesn't really anger me that much. But when you talk about a new virus, I think it's a news story when it happens in a busy place like China really easily, because we associate the visual of, a certain cultural hygiene, and everyone's been to a Chinese restaurant, and you have all these biases that play into that. And it is just the way it is, man. So I am not shocked at all.
I was thinking about the topic of these viruses and how they travel so quickly now because of planes and people's movement around the globe. If someone contracts a virus in the other side of the planet,
we're done.
A day later, it can literally be in New York City.
Yeah.
This seems like a bad thing if you were going to have, say, a plague, because it would just spread so quickly.
Yeah.
At the same time, it might also be kind of a good thing. Just in that if America is affected by this, medicine will be designed for it faster.
Right.
Is this? I'm spitballing here, but I'm saying the idea that a very terrifying virus can spread across the globe obviously is bad. But if it's contained in a place that does not have the means to adequately treat it, or the technology, or the science, or the money, or they keep it under the table, like because they don't want people to know about it, et cetera, maybe tackling bacterial, viral things as a global scientific community is a net positive.
This is the service that the Knicks provide in relegation for the rest of the NBA. They look at this virus that's happening in the Mecca, and they're like, we're not doing that. We got to protect ourselves against that. And then everyone's healthier except them. And that's our civic duty. But I got caught in a rabbit hole of reading some anti-vaxxer thread, which is ridiculous, but it was a funny picture that ended up me reading, like someone talking about how vaccines are harmful and they hurt people and they make them sick instead of helping them. But he has the solution, which is, why don't we introduce a little bit of the virus to somebody in a harmless way so they build up a vaccine that actually helps them ward off the illness.
Fucking genius.
I was like, yo, I think you're onto something, man.
This is good. This is great stuff.
Go on. But like, you see all this stuff kind of play out over and over, and one of the things I'm obsessed with
what
is,
if there was a shot that counted more than twos? Hear me out.
And what if the people who are good at them shot them, but we don't really make the people who are bad at them shoot them?
So let me get this straight. The people who can make the valuable shot should take it, and the people who can't make it shouldn't. This is applicable. We could do something with this information if only we were not dying
of a coronavirus. I mean, viruses are terrifying to me, and it's one of those things that is always in the back of my head that I try to suppress. I am always on the verge of being a germaphobe. I'm one experience away from being a germaphobe every day of my life, but I'm not. I'm okay. I wash my hands a ton. I don't like to eat food without washing my hands. When I go into the bathroom, I wash my hands before and after.
You are invulnerable to coronavirus.
I don't know, man. Yeah, sometimes when you take the subway and they do the testing,
it's bad. It's bad.
Yeah.
Like, how'd you get fecal matter there? Like, that's on the ceiling.
Yeah. We just have to not worry about it and just hope for the best. Because even people who douse themselves in Purell are not immune to just like random stuff happening.
This is a scientific question that I do not have an answer for. Is it possible that something like the Black Plague, is a really cheery subject, could arrive on the horizon and we would not be able to treat it, and it would just wipe out humanity in the way that the Black Plague did? Like, is that still possible?
Oh, it's more than possible. It's 100% possible. And the people who are in charge of protecting us against this admit it. It's like, if something is really bad, we're in big trouble. But nothing is bad yet, and we have no threat, and you cannot live your life in fear.
The Black Plague killed 200 million people.
Wild. And yet it's all Chinese people taking the brunt of this story. What about the
Some
Great
people
Isle?
Some people say it was
England.
50 million. So it's 50 to 200 million. But roughly, it killed 60% of Europe's entire population.
Rats,
60
right?
fucking percent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was rats.
God, man.
That's just unfathomable.
It's wild.
You hate to see it.
Right. It's crazy to me that infectious disease was just discovered in the last couple hundred years. That to me is wild. Like, people were giving birth next to cadavers and getting sick and not putting that together. But
Do you think it's the dead body? No, the dead body's fine.
but that lends the question: what are we doing now that's so dumb that 100 years from now, be like, wait, you guys smoked cigarettes? They were available to you? You know, something like that.
You guys held phones to your head?
No, that turns out not to be true, and we're good with that.
When 95% of people died of brain tumors?
Yeah. The sugar truthers have walked back their doomsday scenario. They're like, all right, it won't kill you. It's not as bad as like drugs, but you should just like not have 2 payday bars a day, Zaire Smith.
Okay, so let's get back to Zaire for a second. No, I'm sorry. Let's get back to Zion for a second.
I'm always down for the Z's.
Yeah, they're great. Disease.
Disease? Which Z's?
Disease. I don't really want to talk about Zaire too much. I just hope he gets I hope he doesn't get traded. He's a cool young player and athletic.
He's a Nick, man. Just get over him. Just deal with the breakup now.
But anyway, nothing is on the horizon. Nothing has happened with him, and we'll talk about it if it does. He hasn't even played in the NBA this year. But what did you think about the way that the announcers trashed Zion for his weight? They shamed him, Andrew. They shamed him.
These are entertainers. They have to do something. They get paid to get blogged about, tweeted. Stephen A. Smith has to say something outrageous. This is their job. So it's part of the agreement we've made in this situation. But I'm just annoyed that they don't come up with better entertainment for us. Fat shaming him. Can I even say that word, fat? Large lad shaming him.
You can only say fat if it's next to shaming.
Right.
Like, you couldn't say Zion looked fat. You can only say he was fat shamed.
Okay, great. So he was fat shamed, and I wish they had come up with a better story or something more fun. But sometimes the simplest one works, and Zion doesn't look fat to me. He doesn't look large to me.
Right, no,
he doesn't look.
Now you're blubber scolding.
Right. I'm silhouette shaming. But he's a big boy, and I don't know. He looks fine to me. He's got big bones, man. That dude runs like a gazelle.
He definitely looks like he gained
like a
little weight, though.
Yeah, I mean,
my concern, as mentioned before, is just his health. I know he runs a little weird, and he always has. But if we know his injury was about stuff that happened to his knee, and we can tell that he's bigger, and we heard from the team that they were concerned about his weight, and it doesn't seem as if those concerns have been satisfied, yet he's back out on the court. I'm just worried about his legs. That's my real thing here. He can be as large and as
rotund,
girdled with lovin', whatever it is. He can be as much of a lard lad as it takes. But I am worried that it will have an impact on his legs.
You know what I was shocked about? Not to always bring this back to the Sixers. They had Popeyes and Chick-fil-A on that plane. Who is there to police? Okay, I don't want to be a chicken cop, but can someone on the team be like, you guys can totally have Popeyes, but like, can I put out an option out there for you? Maybe this something green, just in case you want it. It would be cool if you had some of this. Like, is anyone on the plane saying like, you guys probably shouldn't gorge on fried chicken even though you're young? You can have a couple pieces, but like, try some of this sweet potato out or whatever, you know?
I would guess that the financial stakes are high enough that most of these guys, most of them, eat very sensibly.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
They
I
have
agree.
diets, they have dietitians, personal chefs.
And they're
you know,
22 years old, so they can.
And that was the other thing I was going to say. The major reason that you would want to avoid eating, say, Popeye's chicken on a daily basis is it would make you blubbery. Mm-hmm. These guys are like carb furnaces.
Yeah, exactly.
They
But
put food in there and they just burn it up.
But when Zion got drafted by New Orleans, they were talking about that Muffaletta Mafia. They were saying he was going to put on those po' boy pounds, man.
It seems to have happened, but he was also inactive.
Yes, that's true.
I feel like most players don't gain weight during the season. That I could be wrong about that. I know they don't practice as much today, especially as they used to in the past, or even what the perception is. I just find it hard to believe that you could gain weight over the course of a season if you were active.
I agree.
Because you're also with the team. I think there'd be a pressure to not eat like a fool.
And it's
And
hard
to hit the gym and to do, to
Right.
be active and do the things you're supposed to do to stay healthy. It feels like during the summer when you're left to your own devices would be the time when you would like be on the couch with garbage bags full of Louisiana kitchen chicken.
It's always shocking to me. I think Code blew me if you've heard this before on Cookies, but like when I was lucky enough to have a glimpse into some locker rooms that you've been into as well, immediately I would go for the food because I enjoy a little snack. And I'd be shocked at what was available to them. I mean, in the Knicks locker room, it would be a Whole Foods buffet, like a Sterno buffet, like heated, and a bunch of crackers and some carrots and a lot of carbs. And I was just wondering out loud that if these guys are so valuable and they don't even care about what they eat, I'm like, do you enjoy that? And like, I don't know, I'm just hungry. Like, would you eat this instead of that? Like, sure, but this is my only option. Can't they? I'm really obsessed with the minutia of teams right now, as you can tell. I'm really obsessed with the nutritionists, the psychiatrists, the scouts, the biometrics people. Like, this all adds up.
There was that somewhat interesting article about how players are really into sleep now. And actually, Tobias Harris was one of the guys who was mentioned in that article as obsessing over his sleeping patterns. And they all have apps and they track their sleeping. And
Shout out to T-Mac, the OG sleeper.
was he?
Yeah, he was notorious for just being asleep during everything except when he was dropping bombs on opposing teams.
People were mad at Zion for sleeping on the sidelines. I'm like, no, this is his sleeping pattern. He sleeps during games. Don't wake him up.
This is an American. Oh, this is also an Asian thing. We shame sleep. We're sleep shamers.
You're a sleep shamer?
I'm not. I try to get as much sleep as I can. If I'm tired, I definitely lie down on my floor. I'm lucky enough where I don't have Elton Brand breathing down my neck. But if I'm lagging, I curl up on my studio floor.
Do you have any sort of, I don't know, like hay or anything that you sleep on in this in this Spartan environment? Like,
No,
rags?
because I sleep on rags. I use t-shirts for rags, so I sleep on Fruit of the Loom packs of extra large t-shirts for pillows. But if I get too comfortable,
hundreds of soiled bullies tees.
I've done that.
Swaddled in.
I've done that. It's like the McDonald's theory. If I get too comfortable, I'm just going to be asleep for 2 hours. I get like 20 minutes. That's the longest I go. It helps
I
me.
remember when I first moved down to New York. I immediately moved into an apartment and didn't have a bed. I mean, this is many years ago.
How old were you?
Whatever, 21, 22? 22, I guess.
Oh, you don't need a bed when you're 22.
It was, I think I went, I don't know, maybe a week without a bed. And I just moved into a place and I didn't have any money, and I was like waiting to get a paycheck so I could buy a mattress. Mm-hmm. Not easy to sleep on a floor without being uncomfortable. Even with some blankets and some other stuff, a floor is difficult to sleep on. Surprisingly so, to be honest.
Oh, man, so for around 10 years of my 20s, of my entire 20s, I slept on 2 wooden doors with a layer of soundproofing foam. And it was awesome. I never had back problems. I thought it was really comfortable. So you know that weird soundproofing eggshell looking stuff that you can buy in rolls? And sometimes they have them for beds specifically. I bought 2 layers of those and just put them down and covered it in a sheet. And I slept that way for 10 years. And it might have just been my youth, but my back was never an issue. I loved it.
Right. So what were people sleeping on 500 years ago? Were they sleeping on comfortable shit? Because as humans, like it seems like, all right, if you were a part of a Native American like scouting team, you just sleep on the ground every day.
No, I think you're slightly more advanced. You'd figure out some shelter, and then I would definitely look at the shelter and be like, there's soft versions of this, and then make a little corner of the soft version of, what do you call it, thatchery? Is it? I don't know. I would get the soft stuff, man.
But I mean, like soldiers would travel with their bedroll. The bedroll does not look like the best.
Nope.
The bedroll probably sucks.
It probably sucks, but you need that at least. Like, I never want to fly without my weird horseshoe neck thing.
What about you becoming the Steve 1989 for military bedrolls of the past?
If I was in my 20s, I would rock that. I would rock that gig. But that would just destroy me now.
There's a niche there for someone who wants to be a YouTuber.
Don't they have
Military
shows like that on
bedrolls,
TV where you go to an island with no clothes and you try to figure it out? I don't watch those shows, but maybe I should.
Yeah, I'm sure they exist then, if you've vaguely heard of them.
America's Next Top Sleeper. That's the one, right?
Mattresses are a weird industry in that.
Oh yeah, dude.
It got very digitized in terms of every podcast is now sponsored by a mattress company. But prior to millennials introducing online mattress shopping, it was always really weird that it was like buying a car. You could never find out the exact name of a mattress. They had all these permutations to confuse you with the brands. And then it was a negotiation with the salesperson. Very interesting, just that mattresses were just always negotiable.
What's it going to take for me to have you leave my showroom with one of these mattresses?
Really wild.
Yeah, I bought a mattress maybe 5 years ago, my first nice mattress, and I was pitched. I went to a mattress place, and the guy he asked me about my personality, like what am I into? He tried to be my friend. He gave me a pull and spring water. It was weird.
Always be closing. Mm-hmm. But I understand that sales ideology. I sold cars for a little while.
Oh, what was your biggest sale?
Well, I mean, I was selling like Jeep Cherokees.
Ooh.
Like Grand Cherokees.
Those are still in demand, though.
Yeah, it was when I was really young. It was like an early job.
Did you sell one?
Yeah, of course. I worked there for like a couple months. It sucked. I did not enjoy that job, but I did sell a bunch of them because people come in and want the product. Like, you can sell it to them. You're not on the street with like a sandwich board being like, come in here and get a Grand Cherokee. It's like people come in saying, I want a Grand Cherokee. Right. And then it's just, so the way that as public service here, the way that it works is the salesperson gets a percentage of the money that's between what the dealership owns the car for and what it sells for. So if they own the car at $20,000 and they sell it for $30,000, the salesperson gets a cut of that $10,000 difference. And that's how you make your money as a car dealer.
Not bad. Oh, you were a middleman.
You
were a damn middleman.
No, you're not a middleman. You're working for the company.
But the company's the company.
No, you're selling the product. You're the definition of a non-middleman.
No, because you're getting a cut from the terms that someone else dictates.
No, come on. That's not a middleman at all.
The
I know what
person-
you're trying to do, but that's not a middleman. You're literally selling the product.
I'm looking at you right now. You're wearing a Chris Middleton jersey. How can you deny this?
He's so mid.
Yo, okay, why do used car salesmen get a bad rep? Because their skills are really valuable in society.
Well, because it's the same deal with them, but they're selling a product that is not necessarily under warranty or in good condition or being represented by the company itself. Mm-hmm. So they can be full of shit. They can be selling you junk. I mean, when I went to buy a car and test drove several different ones, they were some of the most just pure scoundrels, man. just incredible scoundrels, just lying for no reason. I'm like, I'm just here to look at the car. Why are you concocting a fake life? Like, they just lie about everything.
Now just sub out cars for American policy and call it the Senate.
Those clowns in DC are at it again.
But like, just watching this impeachment stuff, some guys or some people in the Senate are more convincing than others, and I'm like, you could probably sell cars. Like, this is the same skill.
I don't know if this is applicable to basketball at all, but I will say this.
Everything is applicable to basketball.
I know. That's the secret.
That special sauce.
The real skill of the car dealer, the car salesman, is what you described with the mattress guy. It's developing a rapport with the customer and creating an environment in which it seems like it's you and the customer against management.
Oh, always.
That's literally what you do. That's you meet someone, you drive them around, you engage with them, you talk about their life and their family, you figure out what they want, all the things you just described about the mattress, and then you say, we're going to work together to get this car for you, and there's my stickler of a manager over there, and we're gonna fight against him and get you the best deal possible.
It's unions versus management. It's us versus them. It's LeBron James saying in the playoffs, no one thought we could do it. Meanwhile, everyone thought he could do it. You are management, like you aspire to be management. You're not getting kicked out of a neighborhood. You're moving to a neighborhood and kicking someone else out. It's like, oh man, it's a conundrum, Ben.
It's the coronavirus conundrum. Or something. Anyway,
I love cookies.
I feel like that's enough cookies for today.
Cookies.
Is it ever enough cookies? Or is it always enough cookies?
There'll be cookies back next week.
After the All-Star starters get named, hopefully we'll see Ben Simmons on that list tonight.
I bet it won't.
You don't think so? You want to go on record?
Just did.
Cookies.
Cookies.